And now it is my pleasure to introduce our opening panel, Lifting Up Community Voices, which will explore the different approaches to community-centered media. Please join me in welcoming our moderator for this first block, Alexis Madrigal, co-host of KQED's Forum.
Hey. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. Nice to see this room so nicely packed with all the hitters of the philanthropic media space. It's very fun. This is our first panel. It's Lifting Up Community Voices, and I think we all understand that there's so much to learn by working with the communities that we serve, not merely broadcasting over them or reporting from afar. And we've got 3 different community media organizations represented here by these 3 brilliant minds. Right to my left, we've got Tasneem Raja, editor-in-chief of the Oaklandside. Sitting next to her, we've got Michael Yamashita, the publisher of the Bay Area Reporter. And next to him, we've got Paulette Brown-Hinds, publisher of Black Voice News, former Knight Journalism Fellow, I know there's a lot of you in here, board member of the American Press Institute, James Irvine Foundation, and former board chair of the Inland Empire Community Foundation. So let's get right to it. I want you each to describe sort of why your organization exists and who in the community you see yourself as serving. And Paula, why don't we start with you?
Start?
Yeah.
So all of my affiliations, I'll start with Black Voice News.
Yes.
Just kidding. So the Black Voice News has been publishing in Southern California's Inland Empire, which is Riverside and San Bernardino counties, for 50 years. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary. I'm the second generation to publish there, representing and really serving the Black communities there throughout that region. I just was recently looking through our archive. We have a exhibit that we'll be doing at our local museum. So I spent like last week just looking through 50 years of wow. newspapers in a digital archive. And when the paper started, it was started by students actually at one of our local universities, the University of California, Riverside. And they started it because they felt that the campus newspaper did not represent them, it did not speak for them. And it ended up when they graduated in the community, and eventually my family became stewards of the paper about 40 years ago. So I've kind of grown up with the newspaper. But looking through the archive, I saw that the newspaper really was embedded in community, and it became the voice of the community. It was cool to see the community reporters. So there were people who just volunteered, for a very long time. We had no, full-time or any, besides a few freelancers, full-time journalists. So these were all community folks who considered it their voice, really. Yeah. And now, it's still, I think, a publication that's in dialogue with community. And we can talk more, more about that in a few minutes. But still representing the community, but really focused on the key issues that the community brings to us, and reflecting that back to them.
Cool. Michael?
Bay Area Reporter is San Francisco's legacy LGBTQ newspaper. Started in 1971, so we've just celebrated our 52nd year in continuous publication. Nice. And we're currently the oldest LGBTQ weekly newspaper publication. In continuous publication, we've never missed a deadline, even with the Loma Prieta earthquake. We came through that one. But of course, we've started out of community, started proudly as a bar rag, right? Distributed in gay bars at the time, and developed with the political developments in San Francisco and nationwide. Harvey Milk was our first political columnist before he had to give it up when he became supervisor. But we've grown through challenges like the AIDS crisis, many political battles, and we're still here. When marriage equality passed, we thought, okay, we're gonna hang it up, we're going to go out of business now. But then came Donald Trump, so, which has unfortunately been good for business in some cases. But we're still here, and I see a bright future for us. It's been a struggle. I have to admit, COVID was really scary for us. But in fact, it was probably the best thing that happened to us because it made us leaner and meaner, more efficient. We moved to almost virtual office, which was a dream that seemed impossible. And our advertising is coming back. But more importantly from that, I've created ad hoc partnerships with local San Francisco media, also with LGBTQ publications on the West Coast and in California, and also with our partnerships with other legacy LGBTQ publications across the country. So we have like these different regional networks that we've developed, and we're also selling advertising to each other, which has been a new revenue stream for us. And it's quite exciting because we're doing something for ourselves as publications, right? Relying on the best talents that we each can bring to the table. So it's exciting times, again, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Tasneem, so yeah, why does Oaklandside exist, and who in the community do you see yourself as serving?
Well, I'm very inspired by hearing about Michael and Paulette and your publication's decades-long histories, because that's what we're aiming for at Oaklandside. We have not been around for decades. We've been around for a small number of years. We launched in 2020. I think March 2020 was when we first started publishing, and that was not the plan. We didn't expect to launch at the beginning of a global pandemic, but that is where we were, so we said, let's get to work. And the thinking behind Oaklandside originally was to say, Oakland had lost its daily legacy newspaper in the Oakland Tribune, which was a shadow of its former self by 2019 when we first started talking about creating the Oaklandside. We said, Oakland is this incredibly important, diverse, historically, just so powerful mid-sized city in America. It deserves its own publication.
Shout out to Oakland.
Shout out to Oakland. And it's not right that Oakland doesn't have that. But we don't just want to replace what used to be. We actually want to do better. We know that legacy media in Oakland has never done a great job of serving all of Oakland, and at times has done a harmful job of covering Oakland. So we started not with saying, all right, we're gonna start a news site, what's our name gonna be, what's it gonna be? We actually started just by talking to people. We spent months and months and months just sitting down with people, small business owners, artists, activists, students, elected officials, saying, again, not what kind of news do you want? We didn't start there. We started by saying, tell me about a time in the last 12 months where there was something you wanted to do in Oakland and you couldn't get it done, you couldn't figure out what you were trying to accomplish because you were missing some information. And so we started with those stories of information gaps. Today, we're a newsroom of 10 people, 3 editors, reporters, and a visual journalist. And one of the things that makes me proudest about our work is we hear with some frequency people saying, we like that you cover all of Oakland. We like that you tell stories of East Oakland that are not stories about what's not working or what is harming people in these communities. You do that work too, but also you tell stories about power and resilience and amazing, especially youth efforts in these communities, and also just what's going on, restaurants and shops and events and festivals. So when we talk about Oaklandside, we say we're really here to cover Oakland, and we mean cover all of Oakland.
And do you feel like every segment of the community sort of understands journalism the way you do, or is part of the job sort of explaining this is how we do information?
Well, we started with this idea that, okay, it's not enough to start with listening. Okay, great. We spent months talking to Oaklanders, figuring out the information needs, but then what? Like, you can't stop there. So we started a program that we call Mission Metrics. We're always talking about, like, how do you measure impact? What's your mission as a news organization? Well, we said that has to be continual, that has to be ongoing. And part of that has to be this two-way conversation between us and Oakland residents. So what that program does is we create essentially like a community advisory board. We're actually trying to reach people who are not necessarily Oaklandside readers, are not necessarily like daily news, news readers, certainly not news junkies. And we have them audit our work. We have them say, read our stories for a matter of months and then tell us, was this relevant to you? Did you find something valuable here? Did you learn something from this? What are our blind spots? What are we missing? So we're trying to sort of change the power dynamic by saying we're no longer going to be in this paradigm where it's like, we're the journalists, you're the public, we're going to put it out there, and if you don't like it, tough, or if this isn't relevant to you, tough. We're going to try to learn about how to actually fulfill our mission, especially as a nonprofit newsroom, by getting you to grade us.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about this panel, and Paulette, one of the reasons why I read your other affiliations, is that I think all three of these orgs are trying to build community, not just meaning come closer to our journalism or come to our events, but be this kind of connective tissue within the community. Can you talk about the way that you feel like Black Voice News is doing that in Riverside and the counties down there?
Yeah, and Riverside, when I looked at kind of the past, I was really reflecting on what we're doing now. And you mentioned that kind of two-way conversation, and I see us in dialogue with our community, and the way that it's kind of showing up in our work. It's not just the newsroom, so it may be the reporters who are reporting on health equity, issues, and then they're, they're doing work with doulas, for instance. We just did a series called Black Joy, where we photographed it. We just saw the catchlight photographs. One of our photographers is actually, her photos were part of that collage. But she photographed Black families and their doulas. And we just ended up doing this series and reaching, I think, for us, a new audience of young families that we hadn't really talked with before. And I see it's not just the newsroom for us. So our revenue person is now working with Black-led organizations that are doing kind of community events work. And so they came to us and they said, can we partner? And so we become this kind of institution in the community that is still doing that kind of accountability journalism, but we're also the place where folks can come to kind of find a platform for information. So another organization, the Divine Nine, which are Black fraternities and sororities in our community, reached out to us because they wanted to do a conversation series on voting, like how to get, educate our folks on voting. And so we started talking as a newspaper. And so in 2 weeks, we're going to host, as the Black Voice News, this session. And I helped them get the panelists. They asked me to moderate. And then they're bringing together these, 9 sorority and fraternities. They're bringing together their people for us to have this conversation about voting, and we have a few elected officials on that panel. So a connective tissue, we become that kind of point, that intersection point when it comes to the information needs of the community. And so I'm seeing it kind of morph and change, over the 50 years. We started, kind of as that place for people in the community to have a voice. And now we're this institution where diverse parts of our community can come, and it's reflected in the news work that we're doing, in the newspaper, on the websites, and then it's also reflected in these events that we're hosting.
Yeah. You've also been involved in this kind of movement of some community foundations to fund local media initiatives. I wonder if you found anything tricky about having to switch between those hats.
Tricky.
Yeah.
Don Garcia.
It worked great, no problem.
Don Garcia is laughing, my director at JSK. I'm actually a current fellow right now at JSK. This is my last, I'm doing that too. It's my last 2 days as a JSK senior fellow. I've been able to find a way to kind of bring all those different hats, those different worlds for me together. And Don was actually great when I started my fellowship this year. I was going to do something different that related to some of the data journalism work we're doing with the paper. And then I had been invited to Media Impact Funders in Los Angeles, a session to talk about the work I've been doing with community foundations. And right after that, Dawn said, Paulette, this should be your project for the year. Because I'm on these different boards, I'm on the James Irvine Foundation board, and I know Mike Smith is here, one of our staff members. I'm on the Inland Empire Community Foundation board, and we do a lot of re-granting for our region through the Community Foundation. So I saw how kind of big philanthropy works with community foundations. And then I saw where community foundations within California were doing some funding around journalism and media. And there was an increasing appetite to do more. So reached out to Laura Seaman, who is the League of California Community Foundation CEO, and started talking with her, and ended up just commissioning this guidebook that helps other community foundations in California who want to do something in journalism. They don't know what yet, to see what's happening in the space, but also media organizations who are trying to figure out, how do I work with my community foundation? How can I do that? So we put that, it's a guidebook for both of those. And it's become just an opportunity for conversation, for this kind of community of practice that's developing in California. We've had several briefings around the guidebook. And then Don is great, is agreed to host a summit in November that we'll be doing at Stanford, where we bring together foundations, community foundations, a few media organizations to talk about how we could really ignite more giving and philanthropy in journalism in California. But it's just kind of like all works together in my mind.
I need a copy of that.
Okay. The guidebook is available on the Cal Press Foundation website and on the League of California Community Foundation website.
Let's talk a little bit about kind of digital transformation and the assets that legacy publications have. Michael, I was hoping you could talk about the digitization of all of your archives, this incredible run that you have, and how you see that as kind of serving this role as kind of community memory, really.
Well, yeah, that was a pretty huge project. It was underfunded by the foundation founded by our original publisher. But it really serves as a community resource, not only for local community, but nationwide. Actually, we have a lot of people doing research. We get, requests for reprints all the time. People are using it for film projects. And a lasting legacy has been our obituary archives, which are referred to all the time. It was a labor of love by some people at the LGBTQ Historical Society to digitize every single obituary, and they still keep it up every week with us right now.
Wow, that's amazing. Tasneem, Oaklandside and the sort of larger city-side org that you're part of, born as digital entities, what do you think you've learned over these few years about the economics of running a digital-only local news, community news site?
Well, I'm going to stall as I think about that to say that we recently launched an obits section at Oaklandside, because we're just recognizing that is such an incredibly valuable service that an outlet like ours can offer, and we do it for free because one of our reporters said, "This is this is like community news. We're talking about community news. This is a big part of it." Face-to-face matters, it really does. We recently hired a director of events because we recognized that when we really want to build that trust, that relationship, we have to appear as people in our community. And that's part of why, I started my career in local. I went up to national. I came back to local because I felt like this is where we can make the most impact. This is where, when we talk about journalism's role in strengthening democracy, strengthening the civic fabric, local is where we have, at least I feel I have the most opportunity to contribute. And the first couple years of launching Oaklandside were really, really hard because we couldn't take advantage of one of the best things about doing local journalism, which is like
you're there,
being out there, going to festivals, going to City Hall, covering things, like showing up as journalists in community. I think sends a really powerful message around why we're doing what we're doing. You know, we're living in this era of mistrust, and we are absolutely seeing that trickle down of the national rhetoric targeting journalists. Like it is happening at local too. I'm sure that's not news to anybody here. And I find that now that we are able to be in community, put on our own events. We have this great series called Culture Makers, which is, you know, our arts and community reporters sitting down with people on the bleeding edge of culture in all forms in Oakland. And the first time that we were able to do that, which was March of 2021, put on that live event, the show was great, but what happened right after the show, when we were like, okay, everybody, thank you for coming, clap, 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 and then people got up, it felt like a reunion. Like I was seeing people in the audience, you were talking about our role as a connector, getting together, you know, saying, oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long, hugging, all of this stuff. So the digital, the revenue piece of it, I just feel like at local, if you're not showing people that we are your neighbors, we've got skin in the game. Like our kids go to Oakland schools, you know, we shop at Farmer Joe's or Berkeley Bowl or whatever the case may be. I think that we can't sustain. I think that we have got to show that even if you're tuning out from national news for whatever reason, like local is here for you, we are your neighbors, and become a member of Oaklandside to help your neighbors. We've put a big premium on hiring people from Oakland to be, you know, journalists in our newsroom. We are finding that there's just like, there's a trust there. I think there's an intimacy there that, you know, as journalists, we have to navigate that intimacy very carefully. But when we're able to get face to face with people, then I feel like, yes, like this person will show up for us year over year in a way that they might not if we're just an email newsletter showing up in their inbox.
Paulette, what do you think Black Voice News needed to change most going across that digital transition and like moving into away from a traditional black paper and into this digital media outfit?
What
needed to change the most?
Oh, what needed to change the most? Oh my God, what needed to change the most? I think the biggest challenge, it's a staff side. So when I inherited, I say inherited paper, my parents are still alive, but I took over the paper, I'd say inherited, became steward of the paper. Yes. We really had like one employee, 1.5. We now have a newsroom of 5 full-time reporters. We have an editor, we have an assistant editor, and we have a revenue person, but we also have like a data and journalism team. I mean, a data journalism team that does data and mapping. So the change had to come for me as just kind of a leader and like really rethinking what we do and what we need to do more, to move into the digital space, actually, to move into the digital space, and then to create like the revenue around it. Yeah. So for me, that became the work we did with data and mapping. So we have 2 actually now, full-time map makers, data analysts, and a project manager who runs that team, and they support, the way we developed it and designed it is they support the newsroom, but then they also do other work. So they get consulting work, and then we have 2 big flagship projects. One is a database of Black-led organizations that started as a consulting project for Southern California Gas to map their Black-led organizations in their service territory. And we expanded it to all of California. And now the database is over 600 Black-led organizations are in this database, and it's a searchable database. And the second project that our team did was taking the declaration, racism is a public health crisis, when many municipalities declared racism a public health crisis after George Floyd was murdered in 2020. We collected those, we analyzed those, and we're creating this kind of accountability tracker. And actually we're working with Starling Lab at Stanford now on some of the distributed storage and blockchain technology to kind of take that data and make it permanently available to anyone. So the challenge for me was taking like nothing that we had and turning it into an organization that could be sustainable over time. And that was really the biggest challenge.
So this question's coming for all three of you. Michael, we'll start with you. I mean, how do you assess, or maybe the verb is measure, the impact of your work in the community?
Like everyone else, through analytics, but I mean, that's a simplistic view, right? But like Tasneem was saying, we've found value in having focus groups periodically, and you'd be surprised at the kind of answers you get and things you take for granted. So it really keeps us, I should say, in dialogue with our readership, and believe me, we hear from them all the time, regardless of focus groups. But yeah, no, the readership keeps us on our toes for sure. But focus groups have been very revealing to us. So we've gotten to the habit of conducting one every 12 months is, ideal. But sometimes it's a little over that.
Tasneem?
Analytics, that's one starting point for us. We reach an average of about 200,000 readers a month, unique readers a month at Oaklandside. We're really proud of that. But we often say, and this is at Cityside, so Cityside runs Berkeleyside, Oaklandside, and soon to be more communities, that our North Star is a membership, small dollar membership. So people who are giving $5 a month. In the pandemic especially, we would hear from people saying, this is with some regularity, we would hear from people saying, I just lost my job or my financial situation has changed, but I want you to know that I'm supporting you with this small amount of money because it's really important to me, you're helping me. So membership is one of our North Stars. And then, as I was saying, that mission metrics work, that focus group work, it was transformational. When we ran a pilot program, it was transformational for the newsroom. And I see the impact in the work, in the community.
Because the journalists took that in better than oh, that story was a hit,
Absolutely.
that story.
Yeah, we created new reporting series. We changed one of our beats fundamentally because of what we heard from the audience. So I think that, look, we also have done big investigations that have, changed the way people have thought about public safety in Oakland, for instance. That stuff is really important, and also it's that ongoing relationship with the audience that I see as one of our biggest impacts.
Yeah, I'll agree. For us, it's not just the numbers, but what happens with the reporting. Yeah. When you publish something about an incident that happened with the police department, and you get a call immediately from the chief of police, right? Who's reading is important too. For us, listening, we this year launched, we call it 50 by 50 for our 50th. It's 50 listening sessions. And like you, Michael, we don't need the listening sessions because we hear them. I go to the grocery store, I'm going to hear. I'm downtown, I'm going to hear from whatever people think. But we are intentionally doing much more listening. And then as a leadership team across all of my teams, we pay attention to that, and then we use that to help inform the work that we do moving forward. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I think we all know that you're the real heart of what we're trying to do here at this conference this morning. Our Community Voices panel, thank you so much.
Thank you.